I've just been watching Bonanza on my little TV that I bought while I was in Tokyo. I bought a little standard TV, and it weighs about 8 pounds, has a 3-inch screen, and it's about the size of a large transistor radio. Or even if that's big, it's about 7 inches high and 7 inches deep and 4 inches wide. So it's not very big, but it's an extremely handsome little thing. I'll send you all some pictures of it. But it did have a tremendous time in Tokyo. It's unbelievable. I left here on the 18th at 1:30 in the afternoon, and went down. We checked out the Master at Arms office. Then we got taxi down to NSA Naval Air Station, to the R&R Center down there. And from there, I immediately checked in without any waiting. But then came the traditional waiting around until, I guess around 6 o'clock or so before we finally got off the ground. We flew non-stop to Tokyo, to the Tachikawa airfield in Japan, and it took 4 hours and 45 minutes non-stop. We arrived there at 11:45. And upon arrival, we got off of the plane directly onto buses, and then it was another hour and a half ride to Camp Zama, which is south of Tokyo. Somewhat, I don't know where. It was at night, both going there and coming back. But anyway, we finally arrived at Camp Zama about 1:30. And then at that point, we received a briefing. They got us all in one big large room and told us the things to do and things not to do in Tokyo. I'm sure many of the guys went out and did the things not to do in Tokyo just to see if they were right. But shortly after that briefing, we were released and proceeded to exchange our money. And that is a big problem, money exchanging, because you can spend MPC, which is military payment certificates, in the exchanges and certain hotels downtown that are sponsored by the USO. But anything you buy on the open market, you must have yen. But if you exchange all your U.S. money into yen and you get ready to leave the country, you can only exchange back to U.S. money $100. So if you had $200 left in yen, you could not exchange but $100 back. So from that standpoint, I didn't exchange all of my money into yen because I didn't really much I was going to expend. But $1 of U.S. money is equal to 360 yen, or $10 would be 3,600 yen, or $100 would be 36,000 yen. So it's really an entirely different monetary system, and it's extremely difficult to go downtown and try to buy something and think and get a price in terms of yen, and then try to think of that in terms of dollars as to how much you're spending. It's probably a rather unique system once you get used to yen, because you, well, maybe not. I don't know. The American system is pretty messed up in many ways. You know, we use inches instead of meters, or the metric system. I imagine yen is really based on the metric system. Anyway, many of the guys that night, even as late as us, left for Tokyo, and I couldn't see that, because the only thing it could possibly be open that hour of the night would be shysters and people out to get your money. So I decided to stay there on base until the next morning. So I got a bed there at the military base for 50 cents a night. And I finally got to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I slept until 8:30 the next morning and got up and got ready to go into Tokyo. And at that time I called Mr. Hoshina Sumitomo, and he hadn't arrived at his office yet. I guess he works banker's hours. So I told him I was going to call back later. Well, and then I decided to go in town to Tokyo to the USO, but I decided it was so far to USO, I didn't get to call Mr. Osina until later in the afternoon. But anyway, as I was going out to get on the bus, or get a taxi or something, but anyway, there was a bus out in front. So I got on it hoping it was going to Tokyo, but I found out that it was not. So at that point, I got off. And as I was getting off, there was a man getting on, looking for a ride to Tokyo. He was also an R&R. So I asked him if he would like to share a cab fare into Tokyo. And he was quite agreeable on that, so we managed to walk around and find a cab. And had a little trouble getting the cab driver to go with us to the USO. He said it would cost 3,000 yen. And we didn't know until later why he didn't want to take us. But this boy had a card that was given to him by one of his friends that had been to Tokyo. And the only thing we could read on it was the USO. So we assumed that this was instructions to the cab driver to get us to the USO. So we gave that to the cab driver. And we drove around, it seemed like, in circles and little bitty circles. And the cab driver stopped many times trying to get information. And we decided, boy, this guy is really out to lunch. He doesn't know Tokyo or something. But finally we ended up in a little out-of-the-way section of town, run down and everything, and he pointed down a long alley, and he was jabbering in Japanese, there it is, something. And we looked down there, and it was Club Bohemia, welcome U.S. servicemen. So I guess this was a little club that was recommended by the USO, and this instruction in Japanese was to the cab driver to get us there. Well, it took us a long time to convince him that we did not want to go there, that we wanted to go to the USO. So we finally got him convinced, and we finally arrived at the USO. And that, I believe, was around noon, or a little after, so we had a sandwich at that time at the USO, hamburger. It was real good. First good hamburger we've had in a long time. And from there, I called again for Mr. Osina, and he was out to lunch and would be back at 2 o'clock. So Jim and I decided to go outside and shop around and see what was around the area. The USO is in the center of the Ginza, which is the largest shopping and business area of Tokyo. One of the most expensive areas, too. But we went in one of the music shops there, and I bought the Tokyo #1 hit of the week. And be sending that to Mother and Dad for y'all to listen to. It's real good. One of the songs is very familiar also. Then we went into a camera shop, and he bought a new Minolta camera. And I looked at the lens for my camera, but it wasn't exactly the one I wanted, so I didn't buy it then. And then after that, it was about time, so I went back. Well, back again. Side 2. Looks like it's going to take many feet of tape. But anyway, we went to the USO, and from there we decided, Jim, let's backtrack a minute. Jim Hansen is a man that we split the taxi cab fare. He's in the U.S. Marine Corps and stationed a little south of Da Nang here in a very dangerous area. In fact, in his company's already lost 18 men and had 50% casualties since he's been here. He's been here 9 months, and he'll be going home in October also. But anyway, found out that he has a degree in history from one of the universities in Illinois, just south of Chicago. And his father is in fitting manufacturer for General Motors and Ford Motor Company. And he had a friend in Tokyo, where his dad had a friend there, that made arrangements for him, made reservations in a hotel there. Although they made a very expensive reservation, they didn't offer to pay for his reservation. So I didn't have a room, and I called the Imperial Hotel and was trying to get a room there, which is the hotel designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. and was unable to get a reservation there. And so Jim offered to let me stay with him, meaning I had a confirmed reservation. He had a confirmed reservation, and would help put the bill on the room, which came out, I think, real fine. It was Tokyo's #1 hotel, and one of the newest. And we had a room with twin beds on the 6th floor. It was a real nice hotel. I was real glad that we had a place to stay anyway. And from that point, I called Mr. Hosina after we got to the hotel at 2 o'clock and made arrangements for his assistant, Mr. Nishimura, to meet us the following morning, as he said, to talk over our schedule for the remaining time we was going to be there. At any point, we, after that, went down into the hotel arcade and did a lot of shopping. Mainly, I did window shopping and get started to buying right off. He had a lot of gifts to buy for aunts and uncle, nephews, and nieces. So he started buying a lot of things. I was just looking around to see what was there. I already had specific gifts to buy. While I'm speaking of gifts to buy, Steve, I didn't buy your graduation gift because when I got there, it was $20 higher in Tokyo than it was here in Da Nang. I'm going to buy here in Da Nang and send it to you. We shopped in the arcade until 6 o'clock when they closed, and then from there we went back to the room and unloaded the packages, and then went down for dinner in the Emerald Room of the hotel, which is the Houston Club, an atmosphere. Extremely nice, with music and singers. And then we had dinner, and from there we went nighttime picture taking down in the Ginza. It was beautiful that night. Yeah, very many real fancy signs. Makes Houston look pretty sick on the way of signs. They've got enormous 5- and 10-story signs that do everything. It really was nice. Jim is from Cleveland, Ohio, so he's also a Yankee. But I was very happy to meet him, and in fact, it's unbelievable how many things we had in common. He also plays the piano and is interested in, as I said, in history, which is very related to art and architecture, and we enjoyed going to many of the buildings in Tokyo. I would have hated to have spent 5 days in Tokyo, as I found out when I got there. Very few people speak English, and I'm glad that I met Jim from that standpoint of having someone to talk to, because once you leave the hotel where they spoke very broken English, and you got outside, you just didn't have a chance. In fact, when we left the hotel, we had the desk man or manager, whatever they call them there, to write everything in Japanese. That our destination and our return trip for the taxi cab driver. We couldn't have made it otherwise because they understand nothing in the way of English. Occasionally you'll run into some cab driver that has been driving long enough that he can pick up a few words, but very simple. And in most of the shops, very large department stores and things of this sort will have 1 or 2 people that speak English. And you talk to someone waiting on you, and they'll immediately run to get this person to come back and help you. I know it took Jim and I, sometimes both of us, to figure out what was going on when we were talking to some of these people. But anyway, the next morning, Mr. Nishimura called for us in our room at 9:30, which was Saturday morning. And he came with his car and chauffeur to pick us up and take us touring. We started with the Imperial Palace, which is not too far from the hotel, and then there we went to the Olympic Stadium, which is the large open-air stadium for track and field events. And they had several very interesting statues and carvings in the stadium. One of the things we noticed everywhere we went to all these big areas. There were thousands of kids, school kids, on tour. And I took several pictures. I hope they all came out. But they all dressed in a certain uniform of the school, are wearing, generally all the schools have the same uniform but a different color hat, or a different color bag or something. And each of these schools were led in a tour formation of a guide, and she carried a flag with a number or something on it. So all these kids, they were flags. It's very interesting, and at least it provided some interest in the stadium to have somebody to photograph in the stadium. All these little kids running around. We had a good time there at the stadium. They had a museum of the Olympics and all the gold medals and things that Tokyo had won, and the platform that the pictures were taken for the top three people of each event. And Jim and I were suckers. We got up on it and had our picture made off the platform.